Good morning. This is Pastor Ernie Lewis from the Blue Point Church. Today is somewhat of a milestone for us. It's April the 1st, which is actually an anniversary. We have now been pastoring the Blue Point Church for 36 years today. But today, and these times, are probably some of the most trying times of our ministry here, some of the most challenging. And sometimes when I think about our people in a time like this, when we're sheltered in place, we can't reach out to them, they certainly can't come to the church here, I'm reminded of what it was like for the Apostle Paul. Paul was in prison for some time, and during those days he wrote some prison epistles. So I went to look at those to see what Paul thought and how he dealt with these things. And one of the things that Paul writes in Philippians chapter 2, in those first verses, he says, "Therefore, my beloved, as you've always obeyed, not in my presence only, but now much more in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who works in you both to will and to do his good pleasure." This is an admonition for the church, not to relax their relationship with the Lord, nor to stop any of their service for him, but to be reminded, even while Paul is absent, they still have to be doing some things. And you may be on your own today, working out your own salvation and your relationship with the Lord, because the pastor isn't there to remind you, to exhort you, encourage you. But in the next verses, he gives a promise. He says, he is working in you. Now, that's certainly a vantage point that we don't have, all right? We can teach, we can encourage, we can try to pressure people or even compel them to live for God and realize how important that is. But he says, God is working within you. And his will and his work are much more pure than anything that we could put together. Sometimes I'm afraid we have an agenda we're trying to promote, or maybe something we're trying to impose on our people. But all he is doing in our lives each day, he says, is for his good pleasure. That ought to be our goal anyway, to please God, right? And here's the great result. In verses 14 through 16, he said, "Do all these things without complaining and disputing." Unfortunately, we find ourselves complaining a little bit during these trying times, don't we? He said, "So that you may become blameless and harmless, children of God without fault in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation, among whom you shine as lights in this world." And I think that's my dream for today. My goal is that we might let God work in us to become more blameless and harmless, and we might become shining lights in what is an ever-increasing dark world around us. Our world today could use some shining lights, and you could be just that.